Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Morris from Consolidated Planning Group. We have got a great topic for you today. We have Miss Angelina Hudson with us today. She's going to be talking to us about, she's from NAMI. She's going to be talking about mental illnesses and loving someone with a mental illness. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that we are recording this webinar. You will receive a link to that recording, and you will also receive the slides that we go over today after the webinar is finished. We can't see you or hear you, so any questions or comments, we would love to hear those. Please just put them in the chat box for us, and we'll get those questions answered for you. And then I also want to just give you a little bit of information about who we are at Consolidated Planning Group and how we can help you. So we are based in Houston, but we serve families all across the United States, and we've been doing this for about 30 years. We are fully licensed in insurance and investments, securities, all of that kind of stuff. We've won awards in the industry, and we are happy about that, but that's not really what's important to you. Something that might be more important to you is that we are also members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. I am a chartered special needs consultant through the American College of Financial Services, and we are also nationally certified as Social Security advisors. So if you know anybody who has a family member with any kind of intellectual, mental, or developmental disability, you can reach out to us and we are able to help you find resources and plan for the future for that special individual. We help families with things like protection plans, lifetime care planning. It's going to be expensive, especially if your child needs a lot of care. You have to think about taking care of them for the rest of their life, not just the rest of your life. And we can help you plan for that. We help with transition planning, ABLE accounts, state and federal benefits, waiver programs, all of that kind of stuff. And really, we are here to advocate for you and to educate you. You know, out of in the United States, there are over 263,000 financial advisors, but fewer than 200 out of those 263,000 focus on special needs planning the way that we do. So when you're listening to or working with, I hope, Consolidated Planning Group, you're truly in the right place. It's less than 0.1% of all the financial advisors in the United States who truly understand the nuances and the information that you need to know when it comes to planning for your special individual's future. So some really quick tips and things we want you to think about. I know that it keeps you awake at night thinking about who is going to care for your child when you can't do it anymore. So we always say the first thing is to start now. Start planning now. You're never going to have a longer runway than you have right now. So we might as well get started and look at what you can be thinking about, what you can be doing to plan for the future. If you start now, no matter where you are on the timeline, you can make hopefully smaller incremental changes that are going to have a long-term impact on your full financial future. If you wait, we could run into a more hectic, crazy time. Oh, you've got to get this done now, 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 now. And that causes a lot of stress. We don't want to put you in more stress. You're dealing with enough. Think about what is going to happen after high school. There are great educational, vocational, and residential options that you should consider, but you want to start kind of touring those programs and those communities early to make sure that they're a good fit for your family. And we always want to warn people to be very careful if they just assume that a sibling is going to be able or willing to step into the job of caregiver. You know that this is a very difficult job. And, let's say you've got older neurotypical sister Sarah and younger special sibling Jacob. This is how I always explain this situation. You know, right now they're young. Sarah loves her brother. Of course she wants to help. Of course I'll be there for him. But when they get older, Sarah's going to have her own life, her own job, her own family, her own problems, and taking care of Jacob might be seen as an obligation that she signed up for when she didn't really know what she was getting herself into. And she might no longer be able or willing to take care of Jacob. And, you know, she might see him as a burden, and that could create some resentment. And on the other side of that equation, little Jacob, he's got his sister Sarah. They've been best buddies. They've been partners in crime. They get together and they have fun. And now all of a sudden, Sarah wants to step into kind of a authority role. Jacob might have some problems with that too and think, you know, you're not my mom. Why do you think you can behave like mom? That's not right. And that could create friction as well. So just be careful and be really mindful about making that decision of allowing a sibling to be the one who's going to be in charge of caregiving. It's great if the sibling wants to be perhaps in control of the finances, or maybe the sibling wants to be the trustee of the special needs trust. But having them in an actual hands-on caregiving situation might just be a little bit rough. So, any questions or comments you have, please put them in the chat box. We love those. We would love to hear from you. At the end of the presentation, I will talk to you about how you can make an appointment with me at Consolidated Planning Group to answer your financial and planning for the future questions. But for now, I would like to turn things over to Angelina Hudson at NAMI and let her take over. So Angelina, if you would like to have at it. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me back. And I want to say welcome to those who are listening and thank you for your attention during this brief time. And good afternoon. My name is
Yeah.
Angelina Hudson. I work for NAMI Greater Houston. NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I've really been with NAMI for 25 years. Only the CEO for the last 3 years, but 25 years ago, I sat in a seat and I just really felt I just wasn't going to make it. And so I'll get into that story as we go through the slides. All right. So the agenda for my little speech is a brief introduction, and then I'm going to get into my journey. I also want to highlight how emotion impacts our ability to make decisions. Sometimes we freeze, sometimes we run and hide, but I'm going to talk about how they are predictable, and then there's ways to find support when you're in those stages. I'm going to talk a little bit about psychoeducation and support, and then some final takeaways. So, in most people's lives, there's all of these times of life where there's a lot for us to celebrate. And we think that mental health challenges are really brought on by a lot of stress. And when we think of the word stress, we think of all the negative things like someone died, or there was a horrific accident, or there was some crime backstory. But honestly, stress can be good stress as well as negative stress. So if you are living with a mental health condition in your life, in your family, and let's say it's not been diagnosed, you might wonder why certain behaviors pop up. This is what I call the obscurity of mental illness, because things don't have to be bad. You don't have to be bad parents. Your children don't have to be bad children. You didn't do anything wrong. Mental health conditions just are. They're the most commonly thought reason for mental health conditions is that there's an underlying predisposition and then an environmental trigger. So, something happens in someone's life and it triggers this underlying predisposition for having a mental health condition. That could be a graduation from high school or college, moving into more adult responsibilities. That could be a marriage. That could be the birth of a new child. And yes, it could be other things as well that are more, tragic in nature. But stress is just stress. People ask me, I have 3 children diagnosed, and people ask me, Angelina, what were your children's trigger? And you know what I've always said? Birth. because I really don't know what it was. But I do know this. I don't blame myself anymore. Mental health conditions just are. And the numbers are real and they are staggering. The statistics are in America, when you look at children in America, um, it's 1 in 5 children are going to have something that is diagnosable. That means, if you paid attention to it and got the right intervention, yes, you could probably get a diagnosis. The tragedy is 50% of children never get treatment for whatever reason. And what the research tells us is that 50% of all adult cases were diagnosable by age 14, and 75% of all adult cases were diagnosable by age 24. So, what we know then is somewhere between 14 and 24, if you had some sort of feeling in your gut at age 4, 6, 7, 11, okay, by 14, mom, dad, you should be seeking some professional support, because there might be something. It's not just something you think, it's something now that's been obvious to you for a while. The research also tells us it takes 8 to 10 years before a person will go and get help. And the problem with that is students 14 and older, 50% of them who are diagnosable will drop out of high school. And 70% of those who are in the juvenile justice system, once they get there, they learn they've had a diagnosable underlying disorder. Some of them diagnosed already, but many of them not. And so when you see things on the news, when you see things in media and cinema, usually the picture of mental illness that you see is untreated. That means there's no intervention and there's no recovery. And the worst part about mental health conditions, especially if they're like in the mood disorders where depression and anxiety is a part of the story, those stories tend to go down, down, down. They don't just elevate back up on their own, right? And so suicide is now the second leading cause of death in our teenagers. And the only thing that comes ahead of suicide are accidents. So accidents or suicide, that's not where we should be as a country, as a society. So what gets us here? Well, stigma, shame, blame, and guilt, misinformation, blaming people, the just feeling blamed yourself. It makes people divided. It makes them say I remember when we went to our doctor said they needed family history. So we went to my husband's side of the family first. It was Thanksgiving. And we said, hey, we've got these questions. And we tried to talk to, and they said, that's not our family. They told my husband, we told you not to marry that girl. And then in December, we go to my side of the family, and we're sitting at the table for Christmas dinner. And so we tried it again. We go down these questions and we let them know what we're up against. And they say, what? You think that's our family? We told you about that boy's family and you wanted to marry. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of times families as a whole do not want mental health cases or issues touching them anywhere. And that stigma and misinformation is what keeps parents, schools, it keeps everybody in the ecosystem sort of not being the best representative of care for that individual student. So then we have to become the advocate. Let's see, what am I saying on this slide? So now there's compelling evidence that children and youth. Okay, so there used to be this idea that children were too young for a diagnosis. I remember I used to work at an elementary school as a social worker. So I know that when kids had behaviors in kindergarten, first grade, no diagnostician was going to try to label or identify a child earlier than age 6. But what we know now is the earlier, the better. The earlier we get the right kind of help, the neurologist and everybody else on board. And that's one thing I want to put a pin right here. If you are a person that has a student that's been identified by the school, which I did have one that I didn't see it, the school saw it. Go ahead and allow them to do whatever testing, because first of all, it's not a death sentence. It's, you're still protected by HIPAA. It's not going to cut the wings off the child's growth and development just because you're seeking information. However, don't stop there. If you have a child that's identified as eligibility for services and interventions in school, also go to your primary care physician and get a referral to a specialist that specializes in brain disorder among children and just make sure there's nothing else going on under the hood. I can tell you as a mom, I have one child diagnosed with autism, two children diagnosed with, at that time, ADHD and anxiety disorder, and then the other one, ADHD and oppositional disorder, which that was a lot of fun. But in all three cases, they had underlying neurological differences that impacted their auditory processing, their executive processing, visual processing, and their sensory integration. So you got to go to a medical doctor to get the whole story. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Because if you don't, you're going to rob your children of their childhood. I mean, because what happens to a child that is not diagnosed, and these are my three, this is about the age when all of these diagnoses really came to clarity. The Yahoo, the youngest one, oh my gosh, we knew that I was a part of the villainous population that did not vaccinate for the first year of life. I kept him at home. We didn't go anywhere. I was terrified because 25 years ago or 28 years ago, they were blaming the vaccinations for autism. And my oldest son did not speak or understand any language, kind of like Helen Keller, except he could see and run fast. Um, uh, he was so disabled, and he had all of his vaccinations on time. I was just afraid. I was just afraid. But I know now, so I want to say this, I know now that that was not, there's got to be this underlying disposition. You've got to have something going on in the way the house is built. And mom, you're not responsible. Dad, you're not responsible. Whoever creates life is the one who's responsible for how the body is built and how the brain is developed, you know. But I spent a lot of years worried about that. But this is where my journey started. And as you can see, they're all like in elementary school in this picture. And so a child who is not diagnosed, okay, this is why this picture's here, is a child that's going to sit outside the classroom all the time, be banned from field trips. This child is not going to know why they don't fit in the world. They're not going to feel like they have friends. They're going to I even one of these three at age 5 said, I don't think I'm meant for this world. Maybe if I jump off the school building, that'll fix it. So what I'm saying to you is, the longer as parents we hide and run from the truth and normalize and destigmatize the mental health condition they may be dealing with, then the world is going to educate them on how to be afraid, on how to be shamed, on how to think that they're less than. So as a family unit, you have to sit down as a team and decide what's right, what's wrong, what's up versus what's down, and how you're going to live through this journey with dignity and respect.
I just want to tell you, I love this photo so much. It looks like it could have been taken in 1940s because of their outfits. It is so, so darn cute.
It's
Oh,
Easter Sunday. I always
I
come
love it.
over the top for Easter Sunday. So this is the saddest day of my life, this picture. This is me sitting in the diagnosis room of the MRI that my oldest son, and I put this picture in here so you can see how good I look now, right? Versus the saddest day of my life. There was a Monet picture on the wall right over the dual screens of his brain, and they diagnosed him with a brain tumor. Now, in defense of the medical community, okay, he had a hematoma. So a hematoma is like, have you ever seen a strawberry, like a mole that's on the outside and it's red? Well, my son has one in the back of his head, and it's not on his scalp. It is on the inside of his brain, but it's the same thing. And so it did look like a mass. And I bring that up because the diagnosis sometimes is hard to get. Kids are growing, they're developing. If you've got an active 3-year-old, guess what? He could be an active 3-year-old, right? So there's a lot of space and time in the beginning when it could be a mystery to you and physicians as to what exactly you're dealing with. So you just have to be patient with the process. But I went to a school called Lantern Lane, and I met Michael and Valerie Biasini. Michael was the special ed chair. Valerie was a special ed teacher, and I was pretending. Make believe, that I was moving into these really fantastic neighborhoods with really big houses. And why was I doing that? Because the school where my children were attending, they didn't know what to do with the behaviors. And they were asking me, Miss Hudson, what do you want to do? Doesn't that sound great and supportive? Miss Hudson, what do you want us to do? Well, guess what? I didn't know. I couldn't handle the kids at home. I sure as heck don't know how to handle them at school when I'm not there. I probably wouldn't know what to do. I wanted to shake them. I can tell you that. I didn't know. I never had a kid. First of all, my first son was my first son. I had never had or been around a son or a child that couldn't talk and couldn't understand what you were saying and run like the wind. So he was called a runner. Okay. So I didn't know about weighted vests and weighted chairs. I didn't know about, pressure therapy. I didn't know anything to ask, So I went to different schools and different communities. And I would say, hey, I'm thinking about moving here. What would you do if my child came here and did this? And depending on the resources of the school, I got a lot of different answers. And Michael Biasini, who I was taking pictures of all his curriculum, he said, Miss Hudson, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm taking these pictures. I said, uh-oh, you know what I'm doing? I'm not moving into this neighborhood. And I'm sorry, and I'm sorry to be fraudulent. I didn't know about open door or open court curriculum. I didn't know about language masters. I didn't know about in-home training. I didn't know. You see what I'm saying? And I took all of these interventions from this other school district back to my school, my home school, and I said, this is what I want. Boy, were they shocked that I learned. But then guess what else Michael Biasini told me? He and his wife were NAMI teachers for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And he said, you need to take our class. And so I'm gonna get more into that class. It was a big binder every week. They kept giving me stuff to add to my binder. But I sat in that class with 22 other family members who did not have the same diagnoses as my children, but they had something going on. Many of them much worse than. Matter of fact, I was thankful. I would collect my children and go home and be thankful. That's all I was dealing with. So what I'm saying to you is you got to find your people. You got to find people who are not going to judge you, who are not going to shame you, who are not going to blame you. And sometimes those three people are your family members. Did I say that? But sometimes, and so you've got
Yeah.
to find, and you've also got to find people who have overcome, who have survived the test and really have championed for their children. Michael and Valerie Biasini at the time, my son was 4 and their child was 24. So I learned all this information that's on the left hand of the screen. The impact it has on the family, my spouse, the impact on our marriage. I hadn't thought about that, poor thing. I hadn't even thought about how I was impacting him with my upset, my anger, my depression. I remember I was so frustrated with him. I did 2 things. One is I dyed my hair blonde. I don't know why I did that, and it all fell out. That was one thing I did. And then one of the other things I did, he would ask nice questions like, honey, what are we having for dinner? And I would just start crying and say, it's not my fault. I mean, I don't know what I was going through at the time, but NAMI really helped me understand me and where I was and how to move from emotions to advocacy for my son and then later for my other children. So the approach that most psychoeducation programs have, especially this one, is the biopsychosocial approach, which means get a diagnosis. You can't treat something when you don't know what it is. And don't ever go with just one opinion. Get multiple opinions. And even if the wait list is long, just wait or go to another. So let me tell you now here's another little crafty thing I did by child number 3. Texas Children has world-renowned doctors, world-renowned. And when you get that referral, okay, you're going to sit on a wait list. I sat on a wait list for 3 years and 1 week. I counted 3 years and 1 week. My son was big by the time we got in to see the doctor because of the wait list. By the time I got to the next child, I went to the free hospital. And guess who walked in? My oldest son's doctor. I said, what are you doing here? It was a teaching hospital. So what I'm saying to you is sometimes you don't have to go to the best. You can go to the second best, the third best, the last best. Pay attention to who's walking in the room and what their credentials are. Because even in public hospitals, you will have the best renowned physician in that area of expertise in that public hospital, public facility, because he's teaching. It's a teaching. All your Harris County public hospitals and healthcare systems are teaching hospitals. So don't look upside down in something. And can I tell you what had happened to us? My husband had been working for 10 years for Kmart. Kmart moved out of Texas. He was unemployed, and while he was unemployed, we had no insurance. So I had to go to a public hospital with no insurance, and then bumped into my oldest son's doctor.
Wow.
So that's the bio. Then the psychological is figure out what you're going to do. Everybody can't do the same thing. In my case, I was able to stop working, and for 8 years, I turned our whole house into a jungle gym and occupational therapy unit and music therapy. And we couldn't afford all of the different therapies, so I would go to the evaluation and then pay for one or two therapy treatments. And I was very honest with the physician or clinician, and I would say, I need you to tell me what to do when I go back home because we can't come back. And do you know, people who work in this arena with special needs children will give you more than you ask for. I received curriculum, I received manipulatives, I received all kinds of instructions and invitations to conferences that they go to learn their craft about the development of the brain. I cannot tell you how many PhDs I feel like I got during that 8 years of working with my own son. And then the social approach, find your people. Find your people. I'm not just talking about your family. I'm saying whatever church you go to, synagogue, temple, whatever listen, I am not an outdoorsman. I don't know if you can tell already. I don't do outside. But I became a chairman of the Boy Scouts. And all that means when you're a chairman is that you're going to sleep outside, you're going to put up a tent, you're going to learn how not to be afraid of the dark. And I did all of that. Why? Because I found a group of people that accepted my son just the way he was. And I found all these other little boys in this neighborhood, wonderful neighborhood. The name of it was Commonwealth. We didn't live there, but we joined their Boy Scouts team, and I became a Boy Scouts mom because it kept my boys together and it included them and it made them feel like the world was a good place. And so sometimes you do things just for the sake of the whole family, but you got to find your people. All right, here's the best part that I wanted to tell you about. There's some research out there. It's in all of our curriculum with NAMI, but you can find it on your own. It's called the predictable stages of emotional response to trauma. And in case no one has ever told you, if you have a child that you've counted 10 fingers and you've counted 10 little toes and you think you're scot-free and later find out that you're dealing with a special needs situation, guess what? You've experienced a trauma. And maybe no one said that. Maybe no one said to you, you've been traumatized, but you have. It is the most devastating thing. And I've been around people because, I have family members who've lost children, and they'll say, oh, it's nothing like losing a child. Let me just say this. That may be true. Okay. But it's a trauma nonetheless. When you think, especially those parents that I meet now in NAMI world, their children are 19, 20 years old, go to college, 6 years before graduation, have a severe psychotic break, and they cannot finish that college degree. They must move back home. All of that. That is a trauma to the family. Okay. So I want to let you know you've experienced a trauma. And there is research around how the brain responds to trauma. There are three stages of response. The first one is say it ain't so. Your brain goes into protective mode, and it's like, no, it didn't happen. And so during that period, additional research by NAMI says what you need when you're in that stage. You need support, you need comfort, you need empathy. You don't need to fix it. You don't need no one to fix it, but you need empathy. You need help finding resources. You need intervention, prognosis. I remember I kept asking for a prognosis. Nobody would, you know what they would say to me when I asked for a prognosis? They would say, you're doing a really good job, Mom. He's so clean. If I had $1 for every time somebody told me my son was clean, like he was going to be something else. So I was just over it. The second stage is learning to cope. Believe it or not, you think that's the better stage, but you get so angry because that is the realization of what you're facing. And you sort of get resentful, right? Like, why me? Why my street? Why my house? Why my child? And there's a grieving process that comes with that, and there's 9 stages of that. And so, what you need during this period of time is a place to vent your feelings, keep up hope, get educated. Psychoeducation is critical. Self care. You need to know other people in the same boat. Skill training. I remember I just really grieved hard that my son couldn't do the things other people did. And someone told me that I needed to appreciate what he liked, what he was interested. Well, he was interested in ants because he was Mowgli from the Jungle Book. So I remember one day I decided I'm going to get into your world and I'm going to play your games. So we went outside and we killed ants. And I'm sorry if you don't believe in killing ants, but that's what we did. And so I began to learn how to be this kid's mom. But that was my learning to cope. And then the third stage is moving into advocacy, where you're looking for activism, a way to have balance back in your life, have friends again, go to a happy hour, and not just sit in the Walmart parking lot crying for an hour or two. And you need responsiveness from the system. NAMI can help with all these, but there's a lot of other agencies out there too that help. So anyway, I put this on my refrigerator. And there was 2 things that really helped me overcome any emotional distress. One was checking in with myself. What do you feel? And I had to actually print out all the feeling words because I didn't know what they were. I just said bad. I just feel bad. But there's feeling words like disappointed, distraught, bewildered. Okay. And then the second question is, and what do I need? And so if you Google it and just look up need words, then you kind of get an idea of what you might need. But if you look at the bullets underneath each of these stages, it also has some ideas of what you need. But just know that you're an emotional mess and there's help for you and there's help for you.
We all are. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's
And it's okay.
okay.
When you have a loss, and that's what this is, it's a loss. The dream you had that you don't have that. It's a loss. Then you're gonna go through those stages. I'm just talking about the elephant in the room. So 13% of youth 8 to 15 will live with a severe mental illness. 70% of children diagnosed with ADHD go on to have a second diagnosis. So both of my kiddos that used to have ADHD, they now have bipolar disorder. One is in treatment. She accepts it. She's good. I got it. I'm taking, and she's volunteering. She's helping other people with bipolar disorder. The other, the Yahoo, which is how we refer to him publicly, he says, it's nothing wrong with me. It's all of y'all. So he's not the problem. You're the problem. Very, very intellectually smart. 24 years old. He's already had 3 companies of his own. Now, without a degree, working for the Corps of Engineers as a plan reviewer and inspector. He's really very remarkable, difficult to live with. Doesn't like me saying that so much. It used to be he didn't care. Now he's kind of having an issue with it. But anyway, it's true now. And so what you want to do is get treatment in as early as you can, but never break trust. What do I mean by that? Find out how far you can push the envelope with any and all of your children. You're going to do this anyway, whether they have a mental health condition or a serious special needs issue or not. You do that with typical children. But once you get to the limit of what they will tolerate with you, then that's the safe place you work in. And you stay honest, you stay clear, and you build your boundaries. I learned all this from NAMI. Boundaries are very important because just like they want to be independent and right, and they want respect, okay, you do too. You do too.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I had to learn how to do is not feel so bad for their situation that I lost myself in their situation. And I began to, and I did this also with I'm a woman of faith, and I used my faith to help me with this as well. And that is, I was created for a purpose and they were created for a purpose. Guess what? We don't have the same purpose. It took me a long time to get there, but I'm just giving you a cheat sheet to how I got to where I am today, because I would still be crying if I did.
Yeah.
I already talked about the high school dropout and the juvenile justice and the second leading cause of death, but I just wanted to say if you're here today, you're ahead of this game because you're a part of the team that's saying, you know what? This may have come to us, but if it came to us, we're going to get through it. And so I applaud you for being here today. And I've already said this, but it warrants saying again. When we don't pay attention and we don't get the right type of intervention, then the issue becomes more difficult to treat, and there's a long time, lifetime poor prognosis. Now, you're probably wondering, well, you said you've got one kid that won't take his medicine and he doesn't believe in his diagnosis. That's true, but he knows something going on because we keep that right here in his face. We're like, you know, you haven't slept in 4 days. We have this pact where if he doesn't answer the phone in 2 days, I'm at the house. He's got to check in with me
Yeah, I
because he
like that.
deals with high highs and he deals with low lows. And especially when he was looking for a job, he was unemployed for 5 months. Man, he was thinking he was at the bottom. Now he can't get away from all the people that want to hire him. So he goes high, high, and low, low. So we have a game plan. We have agreements. He read this book called The Four Agreements, and then he brought it to me. Talk about,
Wow.
have you? Yeah. He goes, we got to do this. And I said, really? And I acted like I had never read the book before. But he's always trying to improve himself. He wants to be on the right side of right, which I'm thankful for. We fought like cats and dogs. All of his years 13, 14, and 15 were probably our most difficult with bipolar disorder untreated. But I can tell you, I won. But when I say I won, we won,
That's right.
and I didn't enter that relationship. So you have to partner with the people who are spending all their time. You can be mad as hot fish grease at the school or something they've done, but always what I would do is I would take an 8 by 10 picture and I would set it on the table, and and people thought I did it for them, but really I did it for me, because sometimes if your emotions get away from you, you will injure a relationship with the very people that are going to spend 80% of their time with your child while you don't. So you have to protect those relationships. And so you want to partner with the schools or whoever, wherever your child is most of the day. That's who you want to partner with. And they may think you're a little eccentric, because I'm sure they thought that about me, but that's okay. As long as you don't tick them off and then they don't work with you. That's the thing. You want to make sure you preserve your relationships.
That's right.
So here's oh yeah. So this slide is about the conundrum between uh what is regular adolescent behavior versus what is a symptom, right? So understand, bless your heart, they've got these inventories that they do, and they do them all the time, especially Title I schools. And so you may not be on free reduced lunch. We weren't, but my son came home one Thanksgiving, and we were out for the holiday, and we went around the table to ask everybody what they were thankful for. My son with autism said turkey, which was funny because he usually don't eat turkey. He doesn't eat turkey, but he said he was thankful for turkey. And then my daughter said something, and we get to the Yahoo, and he says, "I'm just thankful my parents are still together."
Aw.
So I thought, okay, and I go to my husband, but then I came back and I said, wait a minute, why did you say that? Because we hadn't been fighting, nobody been sleeping on the couch. So why did he say I'm thankful my parents are still together? He said, because every time I talk to the people at school, they keep asking me, do you have a home to go to at night? Do you have food at your house? Are your parents together? And I'm like, so I was a social worker at an elementary school. This is the ACEs checklist, the adverse childhood experience. So sometimes your children can cut up so in school that they think your child is in a poverty situation, neglect, abuse, traumatic, the traumatized, family instability. I said, child, you got these people looking at your family because you won't hush your mouth and sit in class and act right. You keep skipping and walking off the campus, and they bring you back. And so anyway, so just know that your children may be on someone's radar for mistreatment, even though you're doing the best you can. You gotta laugh at it, y'all. You gotta laugh at it. Because if you don't use humor as healthy, this thing will take you out. So, okay, so keys to early symptom recognition. Sometimes the symptoms they recognize are not really the whole story. Mental illness is different. Yep. And especially with early onset. The earlier the onset, when you got a really cute, that's why I showed you that picture. Them kids were cute when they was little. When you got these really cute little kids with these little dimples and everything, they just know them parents are messed up. They just know it. But they're not. That's that mental health condition. And I have now met, they've got a new designation called DMDD, dissociative mood disorder, and it's sort of like borderline, and it's very violent outbursts, violent tempers, and these little kids are like 4 and 5 and 6, and they're cute as can be and strong as elephants and will flip you over. So you just have to you just have to understand, this goes back to the biopsychosocial. Get an accurate diagnosis, learn how that diagnosis impacts your child and what you're willing to do about it. See, just learning what autism is, that's not going to help you. Just learning what I mean, a textbook definition, that's not going to help you learn you. The way you learn you is by getting around an organization that specializes. So DBSA, Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, is all about bipolar and depression. Family to Family Network is all about autism and Asperger's. NAMI is a clearinghouse. We take everything, right? But SARTA, schizophrenia and related disorders, SARTA, that's for schizophrenia and psychosis. You want to go to these, you want to come to NAMI. Yeah, okay, I work for NAMI. You want to go to NAMI, but you also want to go to the other organizations that are going to keep you sane and whole as you matriculate and get these kids to adulthood. And you're not going to be through yet, like I thought, but you're not going to be through yet, but at least you'll be better off if you started early. Same thing with your financial planning, right?
Yeah,
You start early. And what I've learned, because we did start early with buying my son his own house and all that stuff, but what I've learned through CPG is there's so much I didn't know, right? And then laws, there's so many like policies out there. I'm gonna stop saying there's nothing out there for our kids. There is stuff out there. I just didn't know. There's no solid place to go get this information except through this organization. So I mean, and look, and they didn't pay me to say that. I'm just I'm
thank you
just
so
saying.
much, Angelina.
So, and that's the number one issue. Number one, I've been with NAMI 25 years, right? Number one question families have, what am I going to do with Johnny and Sarah when I'm no longer here? Number one question.
That's a tough, tough one.
But you're part of the solution though.
Okay.
And matter of fact, you're in the best position to be a part of the solution. You're really missing the mark if you think somebody else is going to do your work. They won't. I see a lot of parents, they go to the school and they're like, "Well, you just fix Johnny and Sarah." Well, the school's not going to do that because the school has a set of indicators that they're trying to meet that has nothing to do with your dream for your child.
Yeah,
We're uniquely designed as parents and caregivers, and sometimes grandparents, depending on who's raising the child. We're uniquely designed to be the only case manager, because that's really what we are. You're the only case manager that has a vision and a future for your child.
that's right.
And so you're the only one that can manage it because you're the only one that has the vision. Everybody else has their own agenda. The police have their own agenda. The hospitals and doctors have their own agenda. The therapist has their own agenda. And the school has their own. Even the summer camp has all they got to do is make it through 5 days and send them back home. That's it. Their whole agenda is to not get sued. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're the one who has the vision. And so it's up to us. Um, our program now is called Family to Family, but you want to know what it used to be called because NAMI's been around since 1988. I didn't come in until 2001, right? But in 1988, the curriculum was called Parents as Case Managers
Oh, well, that's very accurate.
because it's trying to separate, because what they've always worked on is separating the emotional response to trauma, the emotional cuss everybody out at the school parent, because I'm sorry, that's just what some of us do. It takes us away from that uh, to being more practical with their vision and the steps to get there. It's just, have you ever had a coloring book and the coloring book has all these dots with numbers and you can't figure out what the picture is,
Mhm.
right? So you have to take your crayon or your marker and go from the 1 to the 2 and the 2 to the 3 and the 3. to the, you understand what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And you got to go all the way around to the last number just to get a clear picture. That's kind of what it is raising a kid with special needs. You see the dots, but you don't know how to connect them. And without people guiding you through this process, preferably people who've been here, done that, got the t-shirt, then you won't connect those dots because you're determined to do so. But you're
Yeah.
not going to have the right picture. You're not going to have, or should I say, you're not going to have the best picture you could have made with those dots. So you got to follow the numbers. So get a
So
psychiatric. Oh, I'm sorry.
we do have some questions in the comment
Oh, come
for
on,
in
come on.
chat box for you. First of all, is there a NAMI newsletter that people can sign up for? Because they can't find it on the website, but they would
It,
like more
and it
information.
is somewhere on the website, but it's newsletter at NAMIGreaterHouston.org, and then the person will send you all the newsletters.
Okay, let me put that in the chat box.
It's
Newsletter.
letter at NAMI
And
Greater Houston.
is it NAMI Greater Houston spelled out?
Yes, NAMI, NAMI, the acronym, Greater spelled out, Houston spelled out, .org. And if you, matter of fact, for any question, and this will save you, Michelle, if you hit any question to NAMI GH at NAMIGreaterHouston.org, I get those. So then I'll send it where it needs to go. That is our like info box, NAMI GH at NAMIGreaterHouston.org.
Got it.
And if any question you have from this that you want deeper information, then I get those and I'll respond.
And then can you tell us some of those bipolar and those other groups that you were talking about? I mean, I know Parent to Parent Network and
Yeah, Family to Family Network, Mary
Family to
Jane
Family.
Williams. Let me tell you, when my son got involved in vaping, I was always worried about drugs. Who knew about vaping, right? So
Whole nother problem.
yeah, being the entrepreneur that he is, he went to a school, 4,000 students with the haves and the have-nots. So he started getting the cartridges that were thrown away, recycling them and selling them to the kids who couldn't afford the cartridges. Okay. Well, that led to him
He's an
experimenting.
entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, it got him in a lot of trouble. Let me tell you, the school doesn't like that. How about
No.
that? The school doesn't like that. Even though it wasn't drugs, right? Even though it wasn't drugs, it was still not what the school wanted him to do with his time. And so I was so angry, right? And so I reached out to the Houston Council on Recovery. At that time, Dr. Crystal Collier, who has now moved out and has her own practice, Crystal Collier, she worked there and she had developed the PADAP program, which are for teenagers that are dibbling and dabbling in drugs. And of course, he was swearing up and down. He wasn't using, this is the Yahoo, he wasn't using any marijuana, of course. So I needed support because the only thing I knew with the way I grew up was then you get put out the house and then you were cut off from the family. I mean, there's just no other way to deal with drugs. Drugs will destroy a family, right? And so I didn't know. I wish I wanted to know another way, but I didn't have it. So he agreed to go to a counselor with me, and we went to one of the counselors at the Council on Recovery. And I'm bringing this up because more and more and more kids who are struggling with their mental health are also experimenting with drugs. And they don't have too many chances before they get a hold of the wrong thing with fentanyl in it, right? Because there's an epidemic up in Montgomery County where kids are really not trying to die, but they
Mhm.
are. But they are. And it's
You
because
have
things are,
that in Fort Bend County too.
yeah, because they're,
Here in
I'm
my
sure, I'm
neighborhood.
sure it's everywhere. I'm sure it's everywhere. So all I'm saying to you is whenever you have an issue, a whole diagnosis, or even a symptom that you're trying to get control over, look for expert support and help for you, because you've got to know that the research it bears out best practices, but you've got to mix that with what's in your heart, what's going to work for you and your family. Because when special needs hit one member of the family, it hits the whole family.
And you
So
guys are worth it. You're worth the extra
you got
support.
to,
You're
you
worth the
got to do
time. You're worth
it.
the insurance bills. You are worth it, and your family is worth it. You deserve it.
You deserve it, and you have a better chance of surviving it. So I did go through his room, which was probably the worst thing I ever did. I went through his room because he was 19. And by this time that I was kind of alarmed with him, and we made an agreement. But the good news is after that bad decision I made, because he got so upset with me, it really forced us to make a covenant with one another. And so then it allowed me to respect him. And it gave him an opportunity to respect me back. And here he is, 24 years old with a job, and I'm not worried about drugs, tattoos, earrings, piercings. I'm not worried about anything. He is a clean cut dude, but the fights, the all of the fights we had, and every single time I hit a brick wall, I went and took another class. I took a class on borderline. So there's the NEAP. Okay, so just to go down the laundry list for autism and Asperger's. Are you recording this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
Okay, good, good, good. So for
recording.
autism and yeah, so for autism and Asperger's, you have Family to Family Network. For bipolar disorder, I like Remind, which is the local DBSA affiliate changed their name to Remind. They have support groups for the teenagers and for the parents. But then you also have the national and the Texas DBSA Alliance. And there's a lot of information. When you join these groups, what you're also doing is getting access to their research, their doctors, their conferences, all of that. ADA, ADHD is ADDASR, South Region, Pam Esser. It was because of her, I even tried to give my son medication to begin with because I was so afraid of medication. I had to get educated about medication, right?
And
Then, of course,
we also partner with the ADDA to do webinars with them once a month.
oh, they're wonderful, and they have support groups. The NEA-BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, and I think they've changed their website. So you just got to Google the National Education Association for Borderline Personality Disorder. Guess what I found? I took all of their classes, I tried all their tricks, and they're non-medicinal. One of them is just validation. Guess what? It worked. It worked for ADHD and it worked for autism. And so these illnesses or these special brain disorders, they overlap. It's hard to have a cookie cutter and say you're over here and you over here. They kind of blend. Under autism, I see everything. OCD, Tourette's, uh all of it. I mean, he's just so like a sponge of all these different. So then you use these different techniques, therapies, and interventions with all of it too. Not necessarily, some of it is medicinal and some of it is not. And if you want to learn how to live with somebody, I'm talking about walking the journey with somebody with bipolar disorder, there's two things I recommend. Number one, get into a support group. And you don't have to stay in a support group, every time the door is open, go. But when things are critical in your home, go and get strategies, witty ideas, solutions from other parents who've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. NAMI has family support groups, but other groups have support groups too, right? So just go and talk to people and see what they're doing to manage. You'd be amazed at how wonderful these ideas are, and they won't threaten your relationship. The second recommendation I have, I just did an interview yesterday with Dr. Jair Suarez, Soares, and he is the psychiatrist that leads the UT Health Mood Disorder Clinic
Okay,
and
hold on. UT Health Mood.
Disorder Clinic, and his name is Jair, Jair Suarez, but not Suarez. No, it's Soares. And
Soares.
uh-huh. And he has a website, or UT Health Mood Disorders has a website with all of these independent studies that they're doing. And one of those studies is for hard to treat bipolar disorder with non-medicinal intervention. I'm thinking I might even get my son to do that. It's a headband. It's transcranial. Uh, um, I'm not gonna think of the whole name. That was the biggest word right there, transcranial, but I can't remember the rest of it. But the point is, you want to keep the conversation open with the bipolar person who's diagnosed with bipolar. Sometimes they're not ready to do anything. Okay, fine, wait till they are. And then when they're ready to talk about it again. But in the meantime, get yourself informed about what new therapies, what new treatments are out there. You'd be Miniger Clinic now. Oh, and I got their flyer. They are now taking Aetna. Miniger was a private hospital, private pay only for years. Now they take one, two, three. They take 4 different insurances.
Wow.
So, and they have a free tour of their brain stimulation room. So apparently we're all made of energy or something. And so what's going on with bipolar people, and the reason they dysregulate so often is because of the electrical shocks in their brain. And so what they found is if they interrupt it, even for just a few minutes. If they interrupt it, it resets and then they calm back down. So that's no medicine. And so a lot of people are using that because then they don't have to take a pill. I don't know if you know this, but bipolar medication has a reputation for weight gain and diabetes. So if you can find something else other than that medication that does work, and sometimes it's the only thing that'll work, then you might want to explore that. But those are the two off the top of my head. We have a warm line here. So if you want more information about where to get treatment, therapy, and intervention for bipolar disorder, then you want to call our warm line and they'll give you a much more thorough list. This is another intervention that I use with this works with smaller children, okay? The trap I fell into, and I still fall into it every now and then, is that I think I can do everything. No, I cannot. No, you cannot. And so I went to a conference called Search Institute, and I learned that there was this framework. It's much more detailed than this. So you'd have to go to the website. They give you 40 things that if a child has these 40 assets and their qualities, then they have a higher chance in life of being successful. I came up with Education Parents. It was all about getting straight A's, graduating the top of your class, getting a full scholarship, all of that, right? Well, when you have a child with autism and ADHD, you're not going to be at the top of class, not all the time, you know. And so I had to find another way to define success to my children so that they would be happy with their performance and I could applaud them. Okay. And this gave me that framework. And it shows you all the different strategies to build those 40 assets. 20 of them are external, 20 of them are internal. It is a great framework. It is for elementary, middle, and high school kids.
Fantastic. Definitely check out that
Yeah, check
website.
that. Now, let's say your children are grown, because mine are grown. So I bumped into this wheel that you see on the screen now. It's called the 8 Dimensions of Wellness. And the research says that people who work at, they pay attention to, and they feed these 8 areas in their life are more well-adjusted, successful, and happy. You know, they feel like they've self-actualized. They feel like they've made it in their lives when they have these 8 dimensions covered. So every time I take my kids out to dinner and we go to Chewy's got that big round table. I go to Chewy's. I don't know why they forget that I'm gonna do this every time. And we order our food. And while we're waiting on them to make the food, I'm asking all 3, what are you doing to support the 8 dimensions of wellness? And so that's kind of the adult, and use it on yourself, by the way. I got into a real downer not too long ago, and I was like, why am I so down? And what it was, I had not paid attention to my environment, right? I needed to change things. This is the language of NAMI. These are the principles that are on the wall at all of our support groups. We have support groups. We'll see the individual, not the illness. So whatever the disability is, that's separate from who the person is. We recognize that the mental health condition is a medical condition. There's a traumatic event. There's something that happened. There was an environmental trigger. Of course, I say birth. And all of these bullets, all of these principles are aspirations of what we're trying to achieve when we have little or no control. So that's the thing that I'm leaving with you here with this slide, that out of all we think we can control, there will always be issues around our children's life for which we have little or no control. And when you get there, then you come here to these principles of support.
Absolutely. I love those so much.
Okay. Yeah, we got a warm line here, but if you're ever in a crisis though, did y'all know 911 will put you on hold?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's happening. 911 will put you on hold. So if you're ever in a crisis and it's mental health related or I'm gonna say this, behavior health related, then you can call the Harris County Crisis Line, which is the building I'm sitting in. And they will stay on the phone with you until they get to the door. So you just got to call them. I have a list here of the classes that we offer, the 8-week, the 6-week, the support groups. All of this is free. Did I say that? These are no charge to the individuals.
Free
Yeah, they're free.
classes.
Yeah, they're not, there's no charge. We do this through our walk. Now, if y'all want to come to our walk, I want you to come. So May 17th, we're having the NAMI walk, and it's how we do what we do. So please come and bring your loved one. I'm bringing mine. Now, all of those organizations I was trying to memorize and spit them out, here they are. Why didn't I
There you
remember?
go.
Yeah, so I forgot this slide was here. Why do I have these listed? I have these listed because they help me, and they are required for me to work a full-time job and not lose my mind. So that's why they're here. Show your support. If you know somebody else that's going through something, listen, don't just say I'm praying for you. Do something for them. Clean the room. And let me tell you one more thing. Say it's you. You're the one trapped in your house. Don't tell people you're fine. Tell people you're not fine. What I need you to do is come over here and babysit, or I need you to let me walk out the door. Tell people what you need.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a book by NAMI. It's NAMI's first book ever, You're Not Alone. Guess what? The second book is out. Same title, You Are Not Alone, for caregivers and parents of children. So there's two versions of the book. This is my family a few years ago. Y'all can tell I had more black hair back then. But this is what they look like now. This is us 2 years
Beautiful
ago.
family.
Believe it or not, we were at a funeral. It was my dad's funeral, but I could catch him for a picture. I show you the pictures because we made it. I didn't always think we were going to make it.
And
And
you're making
as a
it every
result,
single day.
oh, I didn't know I would. But because of this, show them that last picture. There she is. I got me a grandbaby. And that is the joy of my life. But if I had cut tail and run so many years ago, and I wanted to many days, uh, then I wouldn't have gotten to this place. And so
Oh,
just know that your latter days will be better than your former days. If you are struggling right now, get educated, find your people, and reach out for support, and never lose hope. And that's my message for you today. And I thank you for giving me this time, Michelle.
I
Oh,
love
the
you
walk.
so
Don't
much.
forget, y'all gotta come. Y'all gotta come out to the walk. If y'all want to,
Yes.
and I'm gonna tell you one thing about the walk though. All of the hospital CEOs, they're gonna be out there in their shorts. All those questions you had that you couldn't call nobody, they're gonna be out there and they'll be willing to talk to you.
Nice, nice. That
Thank
is
you,
all the
CPT.
time that we have for today. I'm not even going to go over my ending slides because nobody wants to hear from me after we've heard from Angelina. She has been fantastic. We love how real you are. We love how honest and open you are, Angelina, and I cannot wait to work with you more on
Thank you.
helping people find the resources that they need. If you guys need us, you know where to find Consolidated Planning Group. We do our free consultation. Feel free to set that up. And if anybody has any further questions or anything that you need, you can reach out to Miss Angelina or you can reach out to me, and we are more than happy to help. I hope you all have a fantastic week. We'll wrap it up for today, and I hope that I get to hear from you soon. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, Angelina. You have been
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.